Do you want to break free in life but don't quite know how? Well, I'm in the same boat, my friend. So today, I'm going to spend some time asking myself some of the tough questions. Like why I even want to break free in the first place, what I plan on doing to break free, and what my idea of freedom even looks like. Hopefully this episode is one that inspires you to ask yourself some of the same questions. And as a result, helps you kind of figure out a bit more of your own journey about where you want to go in life. And if anything, hopefully it lets you know that more than yourself is just lost. Like, everybody goes through that stage in life where they just do not know where they're heading or why they're heading there. And we don't always talk about it. So again, today I am, and it's something I'm going to think about, hopefully for selfish reasons, to better my own journey in all honesty, but hopefully it's something that others can learn from as well. So let's go get into it, and hopefully we all learn something new. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, we're talking about wanting to break free, the questions behind it, and what kind of fuels it. For myself, I've kind of I thought I was asking myself these questions, but I don't think I really was. Now I'm sitting here doing this episode, and the kind of inspiration behind this episode and everything else, it's made me really kind of think about how I'm going about things and why. Like I said previously on this podcast, I didn't always have an idea of where I wanted to go. And when you don't know where you want to go, it's hard to get passionate about going anywhere. Like, if you knew that your destination was a mile away, it's going to be a lot easier to walk that mile than it is if you didn't know how far away your destination was, or even what direction your destination is in. So taking that time and asking yourself in the first place, what do you want from life? What is your idea of freedom? That's going to be the first step on this journey. And for me, it was something that I thought I asked myself before. And looking back now, it was a vague answer at best. So if I would have asked myself previously, what do I want from life? It would have been to be comfortable, to not stress or whatever else. But that in itself is so vague. Like, how can you walk towards that and expect to get anywhere? That, to say that you want to live a good life, that's about as much detail as saying your direction is north. Okay, cool. North where? How far north? Exactly north? Northwest? Northeast? Like, doing that further due diligence behind those questions is what really matters. That's what I'm learning anyway. So now when I ask myself, what do I want from life? What my idea of freedom is, the picture is far more vivid than one word. Like, my idea of freedom is being free to do what I want with my time, being free to kind of explore and just be curious about life. Innately, I'm a curious creature, and the more things I can kind of discover and learn throughout life, the more excited I get. That's what tends to fuel me. That's what makes me excited about life. And I'm realizing that more and more the more I kind of go through my life and the more I go down this pathway in life. Like, there was a time, obviously, before the pod, and I didn't have this outlet. So when you don't have any form of outlet, whether it be creative or an alternative, you just feel like you're spinning your wheels. Again, like you're ready to go somewhere but don't know where to go. And getting out of that phase of just wheel spinning, that's a hard hump to get over, especially when you're in it and if you've got nobody to help you through it, because you don't know what else to do. Sometimes you genuinely don't have the answers, and as a result, you need to go back to the drawing board. And that's kind of what this episode is. It's me going back to the drawing board of my life, asking myself what my idea of freedom is. Is it a job that just pays you enough that you can do whatever you want? Not really. So then there's no point me pursuing a career that is working for somebody else and just pays me a salary. Is it a job that at this point I've done various jobs in my life where I've been a personal trainer, I've done removals work and just labor work, I've done security work, I've this, that, and everything else. I've dabbled across. I've been delivery driver, and like none of it ever made me feel happy. The closest I ever really got was probably a personal trainer. But even that, you have different ideas of training, and when you're as stubborn as I am, it's hard to get passionate about somebody that just wants to train to the effect of just feeling okay or just feeling like they've kind of been active, opposed to somebody that is passionate about training and wants to push themselves to the extremes and everything else. That's where I get excited in terms of training. And I very rarely got exposed to that type of person. The industry or the kind of place where I was working had a whole different kind of clientele. So maybe I should have tried a different gym or whatever else. But that kind of turning my hobby into the passion, turning my passion into my career, for me, it took all of the joy out of it. So I didn't even want to kind of pursue that down the line. Whereas the pod, I'm passionate about that in a different way. Like, I was going to say I don't talk to myself when the cameras ain't on, but that's a lie. But doing the pod, it's a different kind of feel. Like when I think about how it would play out it, if both jobs were in their most successful. So say as a personal trainer, I got incredibly successful and I was training high-end athletes, or if I was a successful podcaster and I was talking to high-end people, then which one would I feel happier doing? And honestly, I'd probably prefer to talk to the people because as a personal trainer, especially if you was to get to that high end, it's somebody else achieving it. So you're filling somebody else's cup in the sense. And it's going to sound rather selfish here, but again, we're talking about our personal lives here. So you're making sure that they achieve something. They achieve their life goals and everything else. And that's fine if you're still pursuing your own stuff on the side. But in a lot of those instances, and especially when you're doing it as a career for many people, it ends up consuming your life. So if you're willing to devote your life to somebody else, by all means do that. To be fair, it's the same to think about security in that sense. Like when you get into the high levels of security, like I wanted to go into close protection. But that level of security, you have to put somebody else's life above your own. You have to be willing to sacrifice your life for theirs. That is the job. If you're good at what you do, that's the goal, is to make sure that you put yourself in front of anything that was able to cause them harm. And I am too selfish to do that. I value my own life too much to do that. So would that be something that's worth me spending my life doing? Probably not. So when I look at the idea of podcasting and talking to various people around the world of just how they've lived life, their different experiences, what they've witnessed, what they think about the world, that to me is exciting and fascinating, and it's forever changing. Like one person's idea of the world is never going to be identical to another person's idea of the world. Everybody sees the world in their own interpretation. And that to me is fascinating. It gives me an opportunity to learn from other people, and it gives other people an opportunity to learn from me. That kind of symbiosis, that's something I can really get behind. And that's something that inspires me and makes me want to do better. So now, when I look back and ask myself that question, what do you want to do with your life? Or what does your idea of freedom look like? It's far more vivid in that sense of I can paint the picture of being a successful podcaster, sitting here talking to God knows who about God knows what. But that idea in itself is exciting. Like, put anyone next to me and let me just ramble on. I'll pick their brain about anything. I'm curious about all of life, so it's always going to be exciting. Whereas if you say you're going to train a random client in a random style, that's not necessarily going to excite me in the same way. Because again, there's no symbiosis there. It's just a one-way exchange. So really asking yourself those questions about why and kind of playing that game of playing things out in the long term and where they would go and what they're going to look like if they did take off in their best instance. Like if you want to be a songwriter, what does that look like if that takes off exponentially and you get all of the successes you're after? Are you going to be happy playing concerts every night or incredibly naive on the music industry? So please forgive me, but it's one of those things where sometimes that naivety, by the way, is a blessing. Like, if you'd have told me that I would be over a year into the pod and it still hasn't taken off in any way that I thought it would have been a lot harder to start and make that initial investment. So sometimes that bit of ignorance and that bit of naivety or whatever else, that's a blessing in order to get you on the wagon. And then so you get so invested that you don't want to get off. And sometimes that's the start that it takes of just starting something in any which way you can, from a little bit of naivety, a little bit of stupidity, and just taking a chance. And then before you know it, you're in so far that you want to make it work. You feel invested, you feel like you've put in that work to create something and you want to keep going with it. And that fuels, at least me, in an epic way. Like that idea of creating something and putting something out in the world beyond yourself, that is that's that's worthy of kind of I'm losing my words now. That's worthy of that effort, that energy to kind of push yourself to achieve something new. So take that time to think about why you want to do it in the first place. Like, what is your idea of freedom? Is it working for somebody else and just earning a wage so you can do what you want in your free time? Or is it doing something of your own? That kind of figuring out what your initial idea of freedom looks like, and the more detail in which you can do that with, the the better it's gonna, the easier it's gonna be. I hesitate from saying better there because the journey is always going to be rough. Any journey of discovery, you're going to hit pitfalls, you're going to hit roadblocks, and God knows what challenges. But it's not to say it's not worth doing. So take that time and sometimes be a bit stupid. Start something that you don't quite know and learn as you go. Have that baptism by fire. Because sometimes if you had all of the answers, you wouldn't start. Sometimes that bit of ignorance is that catalyst to start. I want to try and not go on a tangent here. So the second thing is that idea of freedom. So like I said in the beginning, the clearer you can paint that picture, the easier it's going to be to get towards it. So once you kind of figured out the kind of pathway you want to take, or that the which way you want to go about it. Like, not everybody's going to want to be a content creator. Not everybody's going to want to be a businessman, an investor, a CEO, or whatever. So figure out what your pathway is, and then figure out where you want it to lead to. And again, it's going to change over time, but it's something that there'll be a few consistent things. So like I said with myself, my vague picture was freedom and that kind of self-sufficiency, that self-sufficient idea. Okay, well, give me a flat in the center of London and would I be happy? No. So taking that time to kind of ask those backup questions, I would be far happier with a little bit of land outside of London in not quite countryside, but kind of semi-countryside, So I've got some open space, not so built up, not so rush. And that kind of suits my idea of a peaceful life and the kind of groove that I want life to be in. Now, that's not going to be everybody's idea of happiness or freedom. Somebody's idea of freedom is going to be that city life. Another person's idea of freedom is probably going to be more remote. So take that time to kind of ask yourself and get those details of what your happiness looks like, what your freedom looks like. Like, what are you even trying to escape into? If you don't know that, it's going to be a lot harder to escape. Paint your own picture. Once you've figured that out and you've kind of got an idea, you can work backwards. Working backwards from your idea. So if I take my idea of having a little bit of land and my house and da 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 da. Well, okay, what do I need to get there? Either decent finances, good credit, or whatever else. But I need to know about kind of areas in which those properties exist and how much they are and this, like, there's so much more kind of information that could narrow that idea where it's like, okay, cool, how much land do you want, how much this, how much that, and all of those questions, the more questions you ask would narrow down that direction. So eventually it's not just north, it's go 1.5 miles northwest. And as soon as you're at that region, you know far more kind of how realistic it is to get there, how long it's going to take you, and you can work your way backwards. But it takes that time and it takes that game of kind of playing things out. Again, not every idea or every career you get into is going to be the one for you. Sometimes you're going to get a job just for the sake of getting a job. Sometimes you're going to get a job because you need the money. Sometimes you might get a job out of boredom. Like, there's many reasons people get jobs or start different careers or whatever else. But asking yourself the questions and taking the time to stop and do those checks with yourself, that's going to stop you kind of floating through life like a leaf in the wind. It's going to give you some direction and allow you to choose where you go, because we do have a choice, but you need to make those decisions. So working backwards is definitely going to be one of those kind of tools in that box where once you can kind of paint a vivid picture of the type of life you want to live, the type of person you want to be, and the type of people you want to be surrounded with, you can start working backwards. But until you have those ideas, you can't do that backwards work. So take that time to dream. Take the time to paint your idea of a perfect life. Because if you don't know what your idea of a perfect life is, how the hell is anybody else meant to know what your idea of a perfect life is? And then how are you meant to get there if you don't take that time to think about it? So take that time. There's so much that we should be contemplating in life, but we spend our time otherwise consumed in this, that, or whatever else. So actually take the time to stop and ask yourself the questions. Give yourself the direction. Because if you don't, you're just going to get pushed about in life. I guess the last point would be how I plan on getting there. And realistically, it's going to be working on myself. I can't really be more honest than that. I know it's a boring answer, but when you ask yourself some of the tough questions, you've got to face some of the tough realities. And some of those tough realities is sometimes you need to improve. You're not enough all the time. If you're entering a new industry, or if you're starting a new job, or if you're doing anything new, you're going to take time to, well, you'll rubbish at it. Where you need to kind of slowly improve over time and put in that work. So be willing to be stupid, be willing to do something poorly with the hopes that you'll get better at it. And if you don't even have to hope, if you put in the effort, you will get better in time. But again, it's about constantly reminding yourself that you have to improve. I've fallen into the same kind of pitfalls and everything else, even with the pod. Like there's parts in which of like the editing that I get complacent. There's parts of like the thumbnails where I get complacent. And don't get me wrong, there are excuses I could make for it where it's life is busy, life is hectic. But there's also a lot of ways I can kind of diffuse those or pick those arguments apart in seconds because I'd found time to procrastinate or do whatever else. So I could have found the time to put in a little bit more effort here and improve things a bit more there. And over time, it would have paid off. So taking that honest look at yourself and asking yourself where you are dropping the ball, that is going to be the kind of key to getting there. At least for me, because you're the one that has to do the work. Like, there's so many things that I listen to or watch about different kind of businesses or different success stories or whatever else. The main thing is they always done the work. They didn't wait for somebody else to do it. And sometimes they get lucky. Somebody else will pick up some slack or somebody else will help them along the way. But they was always willing to do the work, whether somebody else was there or not. They showed up, whether it be to basketball practice, they showed up early when nobody else was there and put in an hour before anybody else showed up. Or the person that wrote 120 songs in order to only produce 10. Or the person that painted 100 paintings to only sell 2. Like, all of these people held themselves to a high standard and didn't believe that their first attempt was their best work. They scrutinized themselves probably harder than anybody else was going to scrutinize them. Because again, it's your life and nobody's going to have more passion or more involvement in it than yourself. So if you can't ask yourself those hard questions, if you can't be sometimes your harshest critic, it's going to be hard to see where you can genuinely improve. And if you can't ask yourself those questions, you're existing in a vacuum. And existing in a vacuum, there's no way to improve. There's no input in order for you to kind of advance things. Like if you think even if you are the greatest songwriter in the world, you write a song and you think it's the best song that's ever been written or whatever else. If you never try to write another song, that may be true. But you could, if you wrote that song and it was the greatest in the world, what's to say you can't do it again? Or if you the fastest runner in the world and you beat the world record, what's to say you can't beat it again next year? Like we can always improve in every aspect of life. Look at where we are in life now. We've got rockets going up, friggin' however frequently. We've got satellites going everywhere. Like, the world is changing so quickly. You have to take those times to kind of look at yourself and say, do my ideas of the world still fit? Does what I want from the world still fit? And is it still even out there? Like, so my mum used to dream of going to Hawaii. But then by the time, say, the 2010s come around or whatever else, the Hawaii that she was thinking of probably wasn't the same one that is there then. Like she was born in the 60s. She probably dreamed of going there in maybe the 80s, 90s. 20, 30 years after that, it's a very different country. Like the whole world's different 20, 30 years later. Like, so everything changes. The surroundings change, the environment changes, the people change. All of these different things are variables in life that are always going to be changing. So if you're not taking the time to kind of look at them, ask yourself questions about them, you risk getting left behind. And then you start kind of feeling lost. And then you kind of end up where we started at the beginning of this episode, not knowing kind of where you want to go or how to break free or why you even want to break free. I think probably why you want to break free is maybe the deepest question of them all. For me, it's probably curiosity is the easiest answer. Like, I am just that dog with a bone in that sense. I'm curious as to where life can go and all of the different experiences you can have and all that is out there. Like, there are so many different ways in which life can manifest, and even non-life. Like, you look at something like a crystal cave, how that forms, and the intricacies within it. Like, you could spend, well, I could spend hours, if not days, just exploring caves and different parts of nature. Like, there's so much in life that is fascinating. Imagine spending a day walking through the Amazon forest. How much that would change your idea of the life, the world, and the forest itself. Like, there are so many things in life that can change how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and how we see life. The more willingness that we have to kind of explore those, the more opportunities we have to grow and to kind of have new experiences and new interpretations of life. At least that's what I think anyway. But hopefully this episode has inspired you to ask yourself some of those questions about your dreams, about why you want to break free, what your idea of freedom even looks like, and how you plan on getting there. Like I say, for me, getting there is a question in which I've got to ask myself and where I've got to improve, where I'm slacking, and where I need to do better in life. And it may seem like a hard or a harsh question to ask yourself, to scrutinize yourself so much. But without that scrutiny, it's hard to improve. Not everybody has somebody kind of in their corner rooting for them or telling them how to improve or to even improve. Some of those people have to be their own corner man. And unfortunately, I'm one of them. But I have that faith in myself that if I put in the work, what I want will come. And realistically, there's only ever one way to find out if you're right, and that's to try it. Try it and find out. So that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of trying it, and there are things I'm learning along the way and things that have changed along the way, but I'm definitely having fun. So it's definitely ticking one of those boxes of my idea of freedom, which is feeding my curiosity. So hopefully it's just another step on that long path, and it may be a long path, but I'm willing to go down it. And again, it's mentally it can get draining. I'm still at that point where I don't know how long this path is, but I at least know the destination is one that I'm intrigued to get to and I'm excited to get to. And that in itself is invigorating. But I'm going to wrap this episode up now because I don't want to go on too many tangents. I'm trying to keep them more on topic and more concise, but hey, it's a work in progress. But I am trying to work on it. The seed for this episode is going to be take that time to ask yourself those three questions. What is your idea of freedom? Why do you even want to break free in the first place? And then how do you plan on getting there? Genuinely answer those questions with as much detail as you can and see what it does. If anything, it's at least going to bring it into the forefront of your mind and hopefully make you think about your ideas of freedom a little bit more and where you want to go in life. So all the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.